Let's welcome everyone here. I am Stefanos Kyprianou.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Panagiotis Georgiou, and thank you all for coming today to our panel. We're going to start off with a couple of words about APLA, our organization. APLA is the product of a huge desire of us and an ambition to modernize the Cypriot political scene and make it more accessible and attractive to young Cypriots of both communities. It started as a few YouTube videos and a couple of podcasts, and now look at us, we have our own Cyprus Forum panel. So yeah, thank you all for coming again, and we hope you enjoy.
In doing so, today we welcome our brilliant guests to showcase the actionable points which need to be followed to create a governance ecosystem based on technologies that can promote a model of more participatory and transparent democracy in an island which is destined to be the tech island of the Mediterranean.
So we're going to be starting with Mr. Marc Papinutti.
Mr. Marc didn't join.
Okay. So then we're going to move on to our panelists. We're going to start first with Mr. Carl Miller. Mr. Carl Miller is a research director at the Demos Foundation, which is a think tank and research foundation concerned with democratic systems. And Mr. Carl, our first question to you concerns social media spaces. And I would like to ask you, how do the spaces of social media contribute or hinder public dialogue? And what tools do we need to ensure and safeguard that they do not impede it?
All right. Thanks very much. Well, and thanks for having me here, everyone. What wonderful. This is my first time in Cyprus. It's wonderful to be here. So, digital democracy. I think there can be absolutely no doubt that over the last 2 decades or so, we've seen this kind of surge in like digital political participation. I mean, in many ways, suddenly using social media platforms, you could do all these things that previously you needed these kind of organized, hierarchical political parties to be able to do. And suddenly, you know, whether you're an extremist organization or a liberal Democrat or anywhere in between, you could create memberships, you could get the message out, you could organize, you could raise money, you could get volunteers. Like the barriers to entry really to actually stepping into political arena began to tumble down around our ears. I think, though, as we saw all of that happen, two really big problems became apparent quite quickly. Firstly, and I don't know if anyone's noticed this, but online political debate is reasonably angry. So you saw all this rancor and dehumanization of the other, and polarization, and the political debate began to fragment. Now, that's an old story, really, and that has much to do with the way in which those platforms work, the business models that they have, and the actual underlying mechanics with which, say, a Facebook or an X really manages what you see and what you engage with. But the other problem was even parking that. As digital participation grew, political parties became very interested in using it in order to win power, much less interested in actually then using the power that they won. So you would see all these like war rooms emerge. You would see all this kind of electoral activity happening. But then after the end of the election, when that parliament is filled again, actually then very little. I mean, those digital war rooms would be switched off. And then we would get back to normal, everyday, routine representative democracy. So since kind of, as those 20 years have gone on, like we've seen around the world, kind of, I say like lots of different attempts to actually move beyond that, to make digital democracy more meaningful. And the example I thought I would just mention to begin, and I'm a super fan of them, I think the most successful digital democrats in the world in Taiwan, Taiwan. They've managed to kind of really try and solve both of those problems. So with a simple tweak, they created an online space, deliberative space, which rather than surfacing discord, surfaces consensus. And kind of in a way gamified consensus. And they began to see on issue after issue all these like super consensuses actually forming. What they really realized is that like political debate often actually causes to submerge many, many things that we will have in common with each other that we don't really realize. But then the other thing, I think this is super crucial and very, very rare, is that they then actually connected digital democracy up with power. So it wasn't just a talking shop. It wasn't just activism. They actually connected it through to the regulations and laws which were being made. And that made it extremely meaningful for all the people who want to participate in decisions which actually affected their lives, whether that was to do with online alcohol sales or Uber regulation or e-scooters. Again and again, dozens of times now, they actually turned those things into law. So for all of us, I think, kind of sitting in all of our polities, all of our municipalities, all thinking about how we might begin to change democracy in all our different ways, I think those are the two big problems that we need to think about as well. How do we get consensus? How do we move beyond this kind of commercially driven kind of platform economics that want to keep us there and often do so by making us angry? And how do we actually connect these things up with meaningful political decisions which are being made?
Thank you very much, Mr. Carl. Thank you very much, Mr. Carl. And let's move on to Dr. Fotis Fitsilis, which is the head of the Scientific Service Department in the Hellenic Parliament. Dr. Fitsilis, how is AI going to affect policy making? Will it be a friend or a foe or something else?
Well, that's a strange question to begin with, because it clearly has an answer. It's going to affect massively whatever humanity is doing, and obviously this includes also policy making, or let's say the whole policy cycle. So from policy making, law making, throughout implementation of laws and regulations, and back. So yes, we have a clear winner here, and this is going to be artificial intelligence related technology. But this very issue has a few tweaks that we need to debate. First of all, it begins with the very notion of artificial intelligence. So this implies that there's something intelligent behind this. This is in principle not right. So AIs at the moment, don't get me wrong, is nothing really intelligent. Yes, there are super complex algorithms that sometimes mimic how the human brain is operating. But no, there's no intelligence behind this, no native intelligence included. For instance, let's talk about simple speech-to-text machine learning algorithms, turning live speech into a written text that machines can again process and extract really interesting results. These are technologies that politicians, political parties, just to link with what has been said by Carl, can really use to their advantages. If we take, let's say, the beginning of the policy-making cycle, policy-making, and if you really want, as the executive, to include various stakeholders of the civil society into policy making, and to make that in a reasonable, fair manner, you need to include a great deal of people. So how are you going to manage this with rather limited resources? And we're talking here not, the state does not develop one policy at a time. We're talking here about massive parallelization. So you need to apply such methodologies. You need to apply artificial intelligence tools and services in order to massively collect input from social media sphere or from dedicated platforms. As a matter of fact, we have been investigating these kinds of spaces in Europe in maybe more than 10 years ago. Well, don't ask me what happened to these results. Unfortunately, that's also part of the problem, that we have been investigating a lot, doing a lot of research, public money, your money, and there was no tangible result. That's a different problem regarding research and its applications. So just to sum it up, yes, there is ongoing use of AI-based technologies in all parts of the lawmaking or the policy-making cycle. Parliaments use it. I can name several examples. Governments use it, NGOs use it. As a matter of fact, I saw a gentleman, sorry about this, applying live translation. So this is AI-based algorithms behind that. So we're all using it all the time without even knowing that. And of course, institutions do that. So the question that hopefully we will tackle later is, how can we frame all this? I'm not talking about, I don't like the word regulation per se. I like the word guidance, or let's say, a framework for guidelines for institutions. How can we make it happen? This is a multi-level governance that we are practically applying. How can we make it happen at all levels, municipality level, prefecture level, and then national and supranational level. So we should be talking about this and not how AI will impact or not our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fitsilis. It's actually nice to hear an optimistic point of view regarding these technologies. Now we turn to Mr. Jean-François, who are going to talk about how actually such disruptive technologies can help facilitate a more democratic system. So, Mr. Jean, the floor to you. I would like to ask you, first let me introduce Mr. Jean. He's the president of the Open Collective Foundation and an environmental activist. And the question to you is, John Lennon once said, give power to the people. Can new disruptive technologies such as blockchain enable that and enable a decentralized democratic system of governance?
Thank you for having me today. It's really nice to hear from all of you. Can you hear me well? Yeah? Okay. Yep. I'm based in Belgium, and for a while I've been working on communities. As we can see today, democratic institutions are kind of lagging behind when it comes to solving actual problems inside communities. Basically my work is really focused on trying to build infrastructure to help these communities. So I'm not going to talk about policy making or how policy should be designed, because our work is kind of trying to not ignore, but kind of create a parallel network where people can actually come up with their own policies to solve their actual problem at a community level. Why is the reason why we focus on this particular level of power communities is because we can really see that people that are the closest to the pain are really the closest to also provide the solutions. But the problem for these people is that they often are like informal groups. So these people, they are like doing amazing works. They are like helping each other, being super resilient when crises arise. But they lack of infrastructure. They don't have access to the same resource than, let's say, democratic institutions, NGOs, and so on. But yet they are doing the work. So for us, technology, especially with Open Collective, which is the institution from which I work, we really see technology as a tool to empower communities and help them to actually behave like their own system, their own democratic system at the very local level. So basically, what we see today when a crisis arises, again, I'm only going to speak about experience today. And so what we experienced in the past few years, whether it was during COVID, during the start of the Ukrainian war, we saw a lot of communities calling us, asking us for help to get some infrastructure, some digital infrastructure, so that they could organize, raise funds, manage these funds collectively, and effectively have an impact on this crisis. So we are working on like tools to help them fundraise, manage budget, spend money on what matters for their communities, And yeah, basically we are trying to automate as many things as we can to make their life easier. And yeah, it's very interesting that to see that yeah, today, like for example, during the Ukrainian crisis, so basically the Ukrainian government couldn't actually help on every issues arising. So for example, we have a group that was dedicated to helping the cultural sector in Ukraine. It was like just 3 friends. They started to fundraise. They started to ask help to their networks and also to bigger funders. And they started to effectively digitize all the archives of the Ukrainian museums. And this happens at a very, very local level. So they don't actually create the legal structure for that. They don't really ask for permission to the Ukrainian government to start doing that. They just took action. And we've noticed that, yeah, this kind of community-led projects are really, really efficient, really flexible. They can quickly adapt to the crisis, to any change of the initial plan. And yeah, and today basically what we do is that we are in really short, we helping unincorporated groups, so community projects, to get on the platform, start to raise funds, spend these funds, and our real focus is to give them governance tool so that they can take decisions together on how they should use money. Transparency is at the core of everything we do. So when we started our work, we put transparency at the center of the technology because we firmly believe that transparency can, of course, reinforce trust for the communities. Like now, if you go on a community, on Open Collective, you can see how the money is being spent, where the money is coming from. So it's really great to reinforce trust, but it's also great to replicate stuff. So when you have transparency, you are also able to take this, take a project, let's say happening in Ukraine, and replicate it in another country, just by looking at who are like the grantors, who are like how they are spending the money. This is something that you can replicate. So this is kind of a broad scope of the experience we have on the platform. But again, yeah, in time of crisis, we can really see that communities are so much more powerful than any NGOs or governments when it comes to help actual people. And so I'd just like to add a small point, not about technology, but about kind of my context. So I'm in Belgium. We are speaking about consensus. And Belgium has a huge tradition of political consensus. So whether you vote for the left or the right, it doesn't really matter. In the end of the day, they will have to get along together to form a government. And the policy is not drastically changed because the left or the right are leading the government. So there is this huge cultural, and it works pretty well. I mean, we have huge cultural differences here, but it works kind of well. And today we're going a step further. We have like an organization in Belgium. One of them is quite famous. It's called the G1000, and they're working on participatory democracy. And what they do basically is that they are convincing municipalities, regions to build citizens' assembly. So they elect the citizens by lottery. They form them, so they will get scientists in the room to teach them about an issue, and then they will ask the people to vote on this issue. So yeah, it was just a small example I wanted to give about democracy in Belgium. We are trying to really make it more participatory, and there are tons of benefit of it. So that's what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jean. And let's move now to Mr. Zaphiris, Rector of Cyprus Technological University. And we would like you to tell us more about we talked about some technologies, blockchain, AI, and such technologies. We want you to tell us about how those technologies need to be designed with a user-centric approach in order to be actually accessible to the people.
Okay, thank you first for inviting me to this panel, and it's a pleasure to be with you and sharing with you my expertise, not so much as a rector, but as an academic in the field of human-computer interaction. So if we go back to the 90s, we have seen some instances of attempts to actually implement artificial intelligence or other smart technologies in existing applications. This was done by Microsoft with Clipper. It was a big failure in the 90s. And there is a reason why that was a failure. And from that failure, I think we can learn why AI in a few months is a big success, or the current version of AI. So the big debate in the 90s was who was in control? Is it the user or the actual system? So every time someone tried to design something that was moving the control of the process, the dialogue, to the computer than the user, it failed. So why is AI today a success? I think it's for three main reasons. First, the data was not there in the 90s. Now we have a huge set of data on which we can actually process and give solutions to real problems and tasks that the user is required to do. Then the second reason, in my view, is the fact that the control of the system remains on the user side. Most of these systems are query-based. So the user initiates actually the process. Something is happening that is not visible to the user, and he doesn't or she doesn't care what is actually happening. And then they are able to manipulate the output of this system to fit their needs and the actual task they are actually trying to achieve. You want to create a talk for a speech or a speech for an event you have been asked to actually deliver. You go to ChatGPT, this is done by everyone here, I think. You query, you get a text that is very well structured and phrased, but it doesn't fit always with the context of what you want to talk. You add a sentence here, you change a word there, and you have what you actually wanted to achieve with less effort. You feel powerful, actually, with this process. And the third achievement is that the system is fitting into real problems that we need to solve. I want to analyze the legal system of Cyprus and propose a new regulation. In the past, I had to go and find every single regulation and law, read them, summarize, analyze. Now I can query and then work on the first outcome and come up with a solution. In the past, artificial intelligence systems were actually pilot systems that were not really solving a real problem that the user had. They were just experimenting to show that they can guide you, for example, to write a recommendation letter, when there were zillion of templates around that I can borrow and actually write a recommendation letter. It wasn't the most important task I had to do on that day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaphiris. We now turn to Mrs. Maria Miltiadou. Maria is an acting director at the Youth Board of Cyprus and works directly with the presidency on youth matters. And Maria, our question to you starts with an obvious statement that we all know that Cyprus is a small country, small geographically and in population, I mean. My opinion personally is that it would serve as a great playing ground, as a great sandbox to test such new technologies and see if they work. So what are we doing as a small island government to implement such technology? And is there political will in that regard?
Thank you very much, Panayiotis, for your question. Thank you for having me here today. I'm very glad we have the chance to discuss about these key principles of democracy like decentralization, automation, and of course transparency. And I think that at this point here, we all agree that democracy is not only about voting. Definitely not. It's more than that and beyond that. So, among others, we have so many challenges, as they have already been described by previous speakers: disinformation, fake news. Allow me to refer to radicalization, which is taking the floor of democracy and makes us very much worried. So the question here is what we are doing, as you said, as governance, as stakeholders, as public stakeholders. And I think the question is difficult. The answer is also difficult. What we need to do to react to these challenges, to confront the challenges. First of all, I think we need to, and I think we all agree to that, we need to eliminate, because we cannot reduce the barriers. Eliminate the barriers to participation. Create the spaces and the environment for citizens to actively and creatively participate with the great means of technologies we have today. So I think that we need to collaborate. We need to collaborate as government with other stakeholders, non-governmental organizations, of course, private sector and non-private sector need to collaborate in order to put forward all these practices through technology that will make, that will eliminate the obstacles and the difficulties for citizens to participate and get the knowledge they need, so they be empowered to actively and openly express their opinions and views. I want to emphasize the impact that young people can make on that, because my role is always to emphasize the important role that youngsters have to play and need to play in this process. We all agree and we all believe that young people have in their hands the future of our country, and as a small country, we need to rely on them. We need to rely on their expertise, because they are the most educated generation of all the others, and this is something that researchers say, it's not me. And we need to allow them to get involved. And how we do that, as I said, and we all said, through technology and digitalization, it's a great advantage that we need to take. We need to take this advantage that technology offers us and make the space really friendly for them and really accessible. And I'm happy to say, before I close my note, that at the moment we're at a very good path. We're on a good track, because we are designing and developing a new platform, a platform where people, citizens, and especially young people can have free access anytime, at any convenient time for them to get in, discuss, express their views openly, and participate in the process of governance and democracy. This is a way of democratization, I think, that makes us feel hopeful about the future, because we are not really there, but I think we are doing small steps every day, small steps towards towards an open and democratic life for everybody. Not to forget to mention that, among others, people and citizens that need to be encouraged and empowered are not only young, but also women and minorities, and everybody with a background that maybe creates an obstacle for her or him to participate. So let's collaborate. Let's do our best to work more and make our work visible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. And now we're going to do something unorthodox. We're going to take some comments in the middle of the panel, and then we're going to continue our discussion with the panelists. So can we hear some comments or questions or whatever? Do you have microphone? Yeah, we can give more. Yeah.
Thank you for a very interesting discussion so far. Looking at the situation in Cyprus and how the technology can empower people to engage, my own experiences here highlight that we have to also deal with the human aspect that may not want to have the technology make things easier. I think of attempts to make appointments online that don't work because there's an attempt because someone wants to humanly control those appointments, or systems to get a taxi that don't work because you need to, taxi drivers want you to know a person individually. And that's what people have told me on this island, that there is a large sense that you need to know someone in order to get the thing done that you want to have done. And the technologies that you're talking about implementing, which should be so easy in an island of 1 million people, would take away that, that human control or that individual element and deprive people of a sense of power they may have. How are you going to deal, how do you deal, or how do you see this overcoming that human obstacle to making things easier for everyone? I mean, there's the general question outside of Cyprus about technologies, but within Cyprus itself, whoever feels, and I think the youth director, right? Yes, of course. Might be best to talk about.
Yeah, get the questions. And I like the idea of the platform that anybody can contribute. You can ask people and etc. Not from Maria, from anything. But how do you control far-right elements from these that they're well organized in social media? How you maybe something that you can discuss in the future or later. But how you can control far-right elements entering these platforms and push policies or other stuff. And the other is, where do you draw the line between humans, AI? Because a few days ago I was in another conference, a Microsoft guy, a Google guy was saying that, okay, you can optimize something 20% with an AI, but you can optimize something 35% if you use humans and AI.
Thank you. Any more comments?
Last comment.
Hi. So my question is regarding, you said that we need to involve AI more in order to make spaces more accessible for young people. But how do we use AI in order to make spaces accessible to young people and also to older people who might have some difficulty in using technology?
That's great. We don't have much time, so we hope that all can be answered, and you built upon each question together. Let's start before we started.
So we're gonna head off again to Mr. Carl, and we'll try to answer the comments of the audience during your responses. We're a little bit pressed by time, so I'm gonna kindly ask you to be as brief as possible. So, Mr. Carl, we talked about how social media can serve as a breeding ground for public opinion and how a great amount of political views is stored there. At the same time, we talked about also about... One person hasn't spoken. Yeah, we're going to talk.
Yeah, Mr. Marc will do the closing remarks.
He's delivering a keynote speech.
Yeah. No worries, we haven't let him wonder that.
So coming back to you, Mr. Carl, regarding the issue of social media, and at the same time the issue raised by Bani is about how far right and far left that both can have harmful effect when freedom of speech is so open. Yeah. So our question to you is there any way to harness that and benefit from that, or is it just a problem that we need to solve?
Yeah. Well, look, there's lots of questions there, and there's enormous numbers of panelists. So I want to just devote my few minutes, I think, to maybe actually challenging everyone here a bit. It's inevitable that around the fringes of politics, there's going to be all these different devices that will try and make politics a bit more transparent. There's certainly, we don't have to lift a finger, there's going to be GPT interpreting legislation, interpreting government websites and so on. That's all absolutely a given. But empowerment, genuinely is to do with power. It's to do with the expression of political power. And that is through executive or legislative action. Ultimately, that is what matters. To change how that works isn't a technical problem. It's not really got to do with building new platforms per se. We've got the technology to change how voting would work or to create discursive spaces. We've had this for decades. The problem is political. It isn't technical. If you actually consider, okay, we create a forum that will try and draft a new law or will try and change the way in which a government works. What's actually happening there, either in a small or a big way, is a little bit of power a little bit of sovereignty is seeping out of a representative chamber and settling in this new area. And that is an unbelievably difficult thing to get a parliament to do. It's an unbelievably difficult thing to get a government to do. Like, governments very, very rarely, hardly ever, actually cede power in a decision-making process. The only way of doing that is political. So in terms of practical next steps, there is only one. Like, people here, or digital democrats, have to win office in Cyprus. Like, they have to stand in elections arguing that politics needs to change in an important way. Like, that's what happened in Taiwan. It didn't happen because activists simply stayed at the margins. It happened because a series of elections swept digital democrats into power in Taiwan. Like, and the person that was outside protesting in the parliament became the digital minister of Taiwan. That was the most important step, bar none. Like, my challenge, I think, a bit is, I think it's a bit of a red herring and a bit of a distraction sometimes for us to fixate on the process. Like, process is there, technology is there. Like, the real focus is on the politics itself and actually connecting kind of quite well-trodden, well-tried digital democratic workflows now actually into political decision making. That is by far the most difficult thing. And if I were here and I wanted to make that happen, that's what I would be focusing on more than anything else.
Fun fact, we did invite the digital minister of Taiwan, but they couldn't come. But yeah, political will is very important. Let's move on to Dr. Fitsilis, and understanding the vast amount of information that there is out there, and as we talked about before, there is a need to harness this information and with the use of AI, make it more accessible to the public. Because anyone from the village, from the old people, from the young people, they need to be able to draft policies with AI and review policies with AI and create some policies that can be then channeled through the decentralized technologies or any other technologies that will be used for the actual implementation. So how can actually these be implemented?
So I mostly agree with what Carl has said. There are a few differences I would like to point out, first of all, before getting to the question. There's a reason we're talking now about AI and not, let's say, 5 years ago, or in 5 years from now. And the reason is because several things came together. The processes, indeed, are already there. Still, political will is missing. But the technology, or part of the technology, is new. So the vast power of computing power has not been there 5 or 10 years ago, nor have been the algorithms, the GPT. So it's a certain type of algorithms. Maybe in a previous version a few years ago, but the number 3 or 4 that's now operating, it's new. So all stars were aligned to have just a few months ago this explosion of tools and services around AI. And now I'm going direct to your question. So indeed, and the professor has said this before, we were lacking data back in the 90s, or we were starting building data, and we built them, let's say, in an unstructured way. Not any standards behind this. These started developing decades later. And we were using systems that were specific to this data. So there was, any solutions were limited to certain pieces of action that were necessary at any time. A very large, huge shift of paradigm happened with GPT, or let's say large language models, which have certain types of things similar. They worked with unstructured data. So they don't matter if you have, let's say, put a and validated them. So you throw everything there, you train your algorithms, and they spit out a certain result. And there lies the problem. So it's super useful because these algorithms do not care about the data. You send there anything you got, and the algorithm spits out something. And now I'm getting to the point. What is this something? Well, this is very difficult to identify because also these algorithms are certain type of black boxes. It's not always possible to, in front of a court or in the parliament, to justify how a certain decision by a minister has been provided. That's essential issue of governance. If you are not able to identify these kind of issues, how are you going to apply algorithms having also a sense of, let's say, duty, that I did my job correctly? You didn't. So, hence, I am talking here about a framework of use. Maybe within this policy discussion that it's necessary to be done, will also decide not to use these algorithms in certain spaces. The gentleman said already, how are we filtering hate speech or far right left positioning? Yeah, maybe you need humans in the loop there and on the loop and everywhere, and just scrap algorithms. I'm not saying here that these kind of technologies, not only AI, we have spoken about other types of technologies as well, blockchain and so on. Maybe you don't need these in any type of
running wild.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fotis. Now turn to you, Mr. Jean. I'm going to try to keep it brief because we're a bit pressed by time. And I would like to ask you regarding the area of decentralized autonomous organizations, more commonly referred to as DAOs, that are technological architectures that enable small communities to govern themselves and to establish rules regarding their inner working, and that maybe can be touched upon later by Mr. Zaphiris when we're talking about the university. So I would like to ask, how does AI as an enabling technology be able to facilitate that and make DAOs more prevalent and allow them to be used more frequently in establishing more democratic and participatory societies?
Thanks for your question. So yeah, I mean, we've used to work, we've experimented working with DAOs, network, cryptocurrencies. But again, and as it was mentioned just previously, this is, I mean, we had a lot of issues dealing with regulatory stuff. So basically, our goal is to provide as much technology as we can to the communities so that they can strive. However, when we try to provide them with Web3 technologies such as Bitcoins, DAOs, and so on, we are directly blocked by financial institutions. So let's say we want to help a group and allow them to receive cryptocurrencies and spend these cryptos, exchange them against euros and so on. Current financial institutions will directly block all our wallets because they would see that we would deal with such currencies. So this is a huge challenge for us today. And as much as I really believe in these technologies as DAOs, cryptos, and so on, there is also something that we should also convene is the fact that today people, they want to deal with fiat currencies. So when you look at when a crisis arises, and when like people obviously they often need food, clothes, help, assistance, but they will also need money. And when it comes to money, they want actual currency they can use in real life. So yeah, we tried to experiment with these technologies before. It was too much of a risk to endanger our whole network, so we didn't really pursue in this direction. So today we are really focusing on trying to kind of, make the best out of what we have. We are not trying to kind of recreating yet another system. We are just trying to use the best as we can to allow people to create democracy in their own reality. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I think, and as it was mentioned also by another member of this panel, the problem does not lie with technology or the communities. The problem lies with the current institutions that are too afraid to adapt to that. And at the moment, they still have all the tools in their hands to actually block us really embracing these technologies. So yeah, if I was working in policy making, that's definitely the area I would try to focus on. Like, how can I make sure that people get the tools they need in their hands regarding technology? Because yeah, from experience, we are still far away from that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jean. Now turning to you, Mr. Rector. Considering that a university can be considered a microcosm of society, how can these technologies be applied in that small scale, and how effective are they in establishing a more democratic system?
Okay.
So you can answer.
Yeah, exactly what I plan to do, actually, because I was triggered with the question from the gentleman there, because it actually touched on the issues of culture, basically, how culture affects such systems. Cyprus has a specific culture in how they handle processes. And you mentioned examples of whether an intermediary, I'm using careful words, an intermediary is actually necessary in a lot of the processes that the citizens have with the policy and the government. I will give some examples from our practice that touch on this issue of culture, and indirectly I will be answering both of the questions. I'll give a hypothetical scenario, and you can judge whether it's a hypothetical or not. Let's assume there is a university that decides to implement digital governance across all sectors of its practice. They move all their financial systems online. They actually implement digital signature for all their processes. They handle all their travel through digital processes. They give voice to their people through digital systems. I will give some examples of how that might go wrong, or how the culture might actually try to turn it wrong, and how the policy of the organization needs to stand up and handle this resistance. You decide to go with a digital signature across all your processes. You have a story to tell, which is everything is digital. You can sign from home. You don't need to come to the campus and actually sign. It's a very convincing argument. And you start to get reactions. We don't want this. From a minority, not necessarily from the huge majority. And then if you go deep, you notice that you have touched some sensitivities. For example, I get an invoice, and I don't want to, for whatever reason, I delay processing it. I don't want to appear signing it 50 days after. If I sign with a digital signature, there is a timestamp. So I refuse. I find other reasons to object to the digital signature. I say it's privacy, it's issues of privacy. It's issues of security. I don't want to have this on my mobile. You need to handle this. Also, for example, people might resist in issues that, again, you might not realize from the beginning that there is an issue that touches sensitivities. How do you solve this? You actually need to start from the beginning with a policy that you will involve everybody in the process. You need to have all the stakeholders on board, identify challenges. All the people have difficulty accessing technology. You need to find ways to give them access. Access can be through different other means. For example, we know in Cyprus that majority of people use the mobile. If your applications and systems are not mobile accessible, you will be losing a lot of the population, especially population from the older people, because they don't own a PC. So you need to handle all these issues, make sure that the systems are handled in a way that they are acceptable by the people, and then try to actually find solutions. How can you implement AI in any operation? I'm going to give you an example. We actually implemented a full system of handling all our financials online. We have huge data now. How long does it take from an order, from the moment they put it in the system, to the final payment of that order? How can I minimize this? That's the challenge, right? How can I minimize this time frame? I can access this data and analyze it through AI and give suggestions on what processes needs to be improved and so on. There is resistance to that. But I'm not going to give the reason.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mari. It was a perfect way to give the give the floor to Mrs. Maria. All change is difficult. So, Ms. Maria, how do you think the public should be informed in order to accept such change? And how do we cultivate the culture of acceptance in the rapidly changing digital governance environment?
So, very fast, because I know we ran out of time. Everything is related with education and ethics. What the Rector was trying to describe was the situation here in Cyprus because of the size. We go back to the size. So maybe that maybe the fact that we are a small country is not actually a benefit, but maybe it's a restriction as well, because we know each other. We have a very well. We have a person we know very well, and we ask for favor instead of going through the process. But above all this, the size, the culture which needs to change. We also have the big restriction of bureaucracy. We didn't refer to that all this during the panel, but we have great bureaucracy here in Cyprus, and this is another thing that we need to fight. So we are fighting all these restrictions. Personally, I think with too much information and education about the normal way of operations that need to be cultivated, become part of our culture. And it's not only the standard education that will make this happen. I think it's extra kind of training of citizens about civic issues, political issues. We need maybe more consultations and wider consultations with the public around several issues. For example, the speech we had the chance to hear before from Mrs. Zachariadou, I don't know if she's still in the room or she left. It was so much of interest to hear that corruption is everywhere, is even in departments and aspects that we cannot imagine. So very well information is needed, very good information is needed for the citizens to start thinking about how we can change, how can we bring a new era in our country, in our small island, and forget all about friends and neighbors and maybe people who can influence, because we know, and follow the normal, the right path without corruption. And bear in mind that ethics is very important beyond everything, above everything, maybe above law, I don't know. Allow me to be a bit radical today and refer to the ethics that we need to cultivate in our everyday routine. So I don't know if I answered your questions. My point was to emphasize the need for education, civic education, and also the we need to try to literate, because I know there was a question from the young lady there about how do we literate young people in digitalization, in technology. We need to spend amount of time and money to give to young people the chance to get literated, even if they have degrees, even if they are very well educated, maybe they need extra trainings, and that what we're trying to focus on, and we have a lot of programs and a lot of services offered about literacy of young people in technologies and in modern needs about everyday life, civic life, and democratic life. And I want to remind here in this discussion that citizens need to participate wider in consultations, and we need as a government to enhance this practice.
Thank you very much, Maria. You indeed answered all the questions, you all did. Thank you very much for this lively and enjoyable discussion. We now turn to Mr. Marc. We did not forget you to deliver his closing speech. Mr. Marc Papinutti is the chair of the National Commission for Public Debate in France. The mandate of this organization is to ensure that the public is able to participate in the planning and the budgeting of major structural projects in France. Mr. Marc, the floor is yours for your closing remarks.
Thank you a lot. The first for us is always that people should be informed. I think that it's a first step. And when you speak about IA, I was thinking that with a lot of information that we receive we see that always the first is to inform people and before decision maker or before political choice. The second part, for me, it's that they should participate, and to be sure that people participate, it's an idea of what we say, the decision maker accept the answer and modify the answer. Even with this, the third point is the fact that we change the decision. I say that this because I see this a lot of times with industrial decision makers, where it's not only political, but they accept with this point, informate, participate, and after they change the decision. What I heard is also that we know social network, we know how to use EA to perhaps not well fake news very check, but we have a lot of time in information fake news, and it's difficult during a meeting to change to verify the answer. But we see that classical meetings were not usable. We go to the people. We go more to the people today because, as it's been said, all people, or perhaps some young, are not in the same shame of understanding of decision of than classical point of view. And for this, I'll say that this because I think that all new technology, for example, we have help service in a special room for people we can't access to informatics. Because if we don't do this, we have a lot of people who don't decide, who are outside, who are not included in the society. And I say this with a particular point of view because they don't accept the changing if they are not included. And it's something more difficult that we think 10 years ago because the others are very quick and very, very quickly changing. The third part, it's how we can do nearly the decision to be sure that every people has been informed or have been able to be informed. And it's not only numeric, it's also paper, it's also, we go on the sound, we go in the market, we go in the supermarket to present projects, to present decision maker this proposal. And with this, we can go to the young, to the old, to everybody. And after we aggregate all this information as everybody to propose to the decision maker, and he choose after. What I want to say is that we have tools, a lot of tools, but we have something that's most important to be sure that public has been informed and can participate to the change of the decision, not only with the tools, but with its own decision. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marc. And so, Maria, as part of the government, before we close and say goodbye for lunch, as we understand, there is too much information in social media. It should be utilized right, but with humans in the loops of AI technologies, with a, of course, user-centric approach. And then with the utilization of blockchain technologies, we can achieve, it's not a utopian thinking, even though most of the topics that we're discussing are a bit utopian. It's not a utopian thinking, and it can be implemented with the right political will. Thank you very much all, and I hope you enjoyed our discussion.
Thank you too, and thank you very much the organizers for this excellent organization this couple of days, which gave us the floor and the chance to express all these views and hear all these nice opinions. Thank you.